The rain fell steady and cold on the November afternoon when Daniel Park first walked into Rosa's diner. He was 23 years old, soaked through to his bones, and had exactly 47 cents in his pocket. Rosa Matthews looked up from wiping down the counter. She was 25, with warm brown eyes that had seen too much struggle for someone so young. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her apron bore the stains of a long shift. "We're about to close, honey," she said gently. Daniel stood in the doorway, water dripping onto the black and white tiles. "I understand. I'm sorry for bothering you." Something in his voice made Rosa pause. She had heard that tone before. It was the sound of someone who had gone too long without eating. Someone who was too proud to beg but too desperate to walk away. "When did you last eat?" she asked. Daniel looked down at his worn sneakers. "Yesterday morning. Maybe the morning before. I lose track sometimes." Rosa glanced toward the kitchen. Her boss, Mr. Chen, had already left for the day. The diner's policy was clear. No free food. No exceptions. She had been fired from her last job for giving away a sandwich to a homeless veteran. But policies were just words on paper. The man in front of her was real. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the counter stool. Daniel hesitated. "I don't have money to pay." "Did I ask if you had money?" "I said sit down." He sat. Rosa disappeared into the kitchen and returned 5 minutes later with a plate. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, and 2 thick slices of bread. The kind of meal that sticks to your ribs and reminds you that tomorrow might be better than today. Daniel stared at the plate. His hands trembled as he picked up the fork. "Go slow," Rosa warned. "If you haven't eaten in a while, your stomach needs time to adjust." He nodded and took a bite. Then another. Tears formed in his eyes, but he kept eating. Rosa poured him a glass of water and went back to wiping down tables. She had learned long ago that sometimes people needed to eat in peace. That sympathy could feel like pity if you weren't careful. When Daniel finished, he carefully placed his fork on the empty plate. "Thank you. I will pay you back someday. I promise." Rosa smiled. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." He looked at her directly now. His eyes were clear despite his circumstances. Intelligent. Determined. "My name is Daniel Park. I came to this city to build something. To create something that matters. Right now, I'm living in my car and eating once every 2 days. But that won't always be true." "What are you trying to build?" "A software company. I have an idea for a program that could change how small businesses manage their inventory. I've been working on the code for 2 years. I'm so close to finishing." Rosa had heard stories like this before. The city was full of dreamers who never quite made it. But something about Daniel was different. The way he held himself. The clarity in his voice despite his hunger. "Where are you from?" she asked. "South Korea originally. My family immigrated when I was 12. My parents worked 3 jobs between them to keep us afloat. They died in a car accident 5 years ago. Left me with nothing but their belief that I could make something of myself." Rosa wiped down the counter near him. "I know something about starting with nothing. My grandmother raised me in a 2-room apartment in the South Side. She cleaned houses until her knees gave out. Taught me that dignity isn't about what you have. It's about how you treat people and how you treat yourself." Daniel stood up slowly. "I meant what I said. I will pay you back. And when I do, when I'm successful, I'm going to come back here and ask you to marry me." Rosa laughed. Not unkindly, but with the gentle amusement of someone who had heard many promises over the years. "You don't even know me. I know you're the kind of person who feeds a stranger when you don't have to. I know you're working a late shift at a diner, which means you're probably working 2 jobs like my parents did. I know you have a scar on your left hand from something that happened in a kitchen. And I know that in the 30 minutes I've been here, you've treated me like a human being. That's enough to know. Rosa looked at this skinny, soaked, determined young man. Daniel Park, you are sweet. But right now, you need to focus on finding a warm place to sleep and finishing that program of yours. I will. But I'll be back. I promise you that. He walked out into the rain, and Rosa watched him disappear down the street. She cleared his plate and locked up the diner. It had been a long day. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. Tomorrow she would wake up at 5 to open the diner, then go to her second job at the dry cleaners. But tonight, she thought about the young man with the clear eyes and the impossible promise. 7 years passed. Rosa still worked at the diner, though she had moved up to assistant manager. She was 32 now. She had dated a few men over the years. Nothing serious. Nothing that lasted. Her grandmother had passed away 3 years ago, leaving Rosa with memories and an old Bible with notes in the margins. Life was stable. Not exciting, but stable. She had learned to be content with that. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when the black town car pulled up in front of the diner. Rosa was training a new waitress and didn't notice at first. Then the door opened, and Daniel Park walked in. He was 30 years old now. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was professionally styled. His shoes probably cost more than Rosa made in a month. But his eyes were the same. Clear and determined. Rosa froze with a coffee pot in her hand. Daniel walked directly to the counter and sat down on the same stool he had occupied 7 years ago. Hello, Rosa. Daniel? Her voice came out as barely a whisper. I told you I would come back. The diner had gone quiet. The other customers were staring. The new waitress looked confused. Rosa set down the coffee pot with shaking hands. What happened to you? I finished my program. It took me another 8 months of living in my car and coding 16 hours a day. I launched it with $300 I borrowed from a library computer repair fund. Within 6 months, I had 50 small business clients. Within 2 years, I had 5,000. Last year, my company was acquired by a major tech corporation for $240 million. Rosa's legs felt weak. She gripped the counter for support. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the counter between them. This is a check for $100,000. That's what your meal meant to me. That's what your kindness was worth. The compound interest on hope. Rosa stared at the envelope. Daniel, I can't accept that. Yes, you can. But that's not why I'm here. He stood up and reached into another pocket. This time he pulled out a small velvet box. The diner went completely silent. Daniel opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the afternoon light. 7 years ago, I promised I would come back and ask you to marry me. Rosa Matthews, you fed me when I was starving. You treated me with dignity when I had nothing. You gave me hope on the worst day of my life. I have spent 7 years building a company, but I've also spent 7 years trying to become someone worthy of you. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, you don't know me. 7 years have passed. Then let me get to know you. Let me take you to dinner. Let me show you who I've become. Let me learn who you are now. I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm asking you to give me a chance to earn that privilege. The new waitress had tears streaming down her face. One of the regular customers pulled out his phone and started recording. Rosa looked at this man who had kept an impossible promise. You really came back. I always keep my promises. She walked around the counter and stood in front of him. Up close, she could see the boy he had been and the man he had become. The hunger was gone, but the determination remained. One dinner, she said. But I'm paying for my own meal. Daniel smiled. I would expect nothing less. That dinner turned into another. Then another. Daniel courted Rosa the old-fashioned way. He met her at the diner when her shift ended. He brought her flowers. He listened when she talked about her dreams of opening a culinary school for underprivileged kids. He shared his fears about success and whether he had earned it or just gotten lucky. 6 months later, Rosa said yes to his proposal. Not because of his money. Not because of the fairy tale. But because Daniel Park had proven that character matters more than circumstance. That a promise made in desperation can be kept in prosperity. They married in a small ceremony at the church Rosa's grandmother had attended. The diner staff came. So did Daniel's employees. And in the front row sat an elderly man Rosa didn't recognize. "That's Mr. Chen," Daniel whispered. "Your old boss. I bought his building last year and guaranteed him a pension for life. He's the reason you were working that night. The reason our paths crossed." Rosa squeezed his hand. Everything connects. After the wedding, Daniel had one more surprise. He drove Rosa to the south side of the city, to a newly renovated building near where her grandmother's apartment had been. "What is this?" Rosa asked. "The Rosa Matthews Culinary Institute. Fully funded. Free tuition for any student who qualifies. You'll be the director. You'll teach them cooking, but also dignity. Character. How to treat people. Everything your grandmother taught you." Rosa stood in front of the building, reading the sign. Her name in gold letters. Her grandmother's dream made real. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked. 7 years, Daniel replied. "Since the night you fed a hungry stranger." The institute opened 6 months later. In its first year, it trained 43 students. Single mothers. Formerly incarcerated men and women. Kids who had aged out of foster care. People who needed a second chance and someone to believe in them. Rosa taught them to cook. But more importantly, she taught them what her grandmother had taught her. That dignity isn't about what you have. It's about how you treat people. Daniel continued running his company, but he spent his evenings at the institute. He talked to students about failure and persistence. He funded scholarships. He hired graduates. 10 years after Daniel first walked into Rosa's diner, they had 2 children. A daughter named Grace and a son named Chen, after the boss who had unknowingly made everything possible. Rosa never forgot where she came from. She still visited the diner every Tuesday. She still ordered the meatloaf. And every time a customer came in who looked hungry but had no money, she paid for their meal. "You never know," she told her staff. "You never know who they might become." Daniel built his company into a billion-dollar enterprise. But he never forgot the night he had 47 cents and a stranger's kindness. He established a foundation that funded small businesses started by people experiencing homelessness. He mentored young entrepreneurs. He spoke at schools about perseverance and gratitude. People asked him about his success. About his strategy. About his business model. He always gave the same answer: "I learned everything I needed to know the night someone fed me when I was starving." Kindness is the best investment. Character is the only currency that matters. And a promise kept is worth more than all the money in the world. Rosa and Daniel grew old together. Their children grew up watching their parents treat everyone with respect. From the janitor to the CEO. From the struggling student to the successful graduate. And in Rosa's office at the institute, framed on the wall, was a photograph from that rainy November day 7 years before their wedding. Someone had captured Daniel walking out of the diner. You could barely see him through the rain. A thin, desperate young man with nothing but a promise. Beneath the photo was a plaque with words Rosa had written herself. He promised to return when he was rich. He returned because he was rich in character. That's the only wealth that ever mattered. If this story warmed your heart and reminded you that kindness is never wasted and promises matter, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more inspiring stories about real love, perseverance, and the power of human decency. Comment below and tell us about a time someone's kindness changed your life, or when you kept a promise against all odds. Your stories inspire us all.